Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Hello and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining me this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and I hope that everybody had a great Passover weekend and week, and that you are all honoring the feast days and celebrating with your family in as much as you can. I know that for most of the mainstream Christians, they are celebrating Easter and the resurrection of Christ, which, I'm all about anything that gives honor and respect and gratitude and praise to Yahushua. I'm just, tentative with regard to how everybody has been deceived to associate the resurrection with Easter, when anyone that spends even a few hours of examination on the origins of Easter and even where it receives its name from will find association to Ashtaroth, Astarte, or Isis Ishtar, being the Queen of Heaven. She was one of the three counterfeit of what is the unholy Trinity. She is the motherly, the feminine aspect of the unholy Trinity, replacing as counterpart the feminine aspect of the real Godhead, the Holy Spirit, Sophia, wisdom, meaning wisdom in Greek, that it's just the Greek word for wisdom, just as Shokma is the Hebrew equivalent of the same word. But in the Bible, especially the older renditions, the Peshitta and the Pampliona Simplicis, these older translations you find, and even now, even in the modern English equivalents, you will find reference to the Holy Spirit as she, or feminine. And even though a lot of it has been mistranslated and reinterpreted in different manners, so that the Holy Spirit is presented as either a neuter form, meaning neither male or female, but genderless, or that the translations have been reinterpreted to mean he, especially in the Bibles that go down through the Western traditions, the Greek Septuagint. You find these misinterpretations. But again, you still find in reference, even in the King James Version of the English Bible, in Proverbs chapter 1 through 11, reference to the Holy Spirit as feminine, which, of course, this makes complete sense for those that really examine it with open mind and look at the scriptures and go chapter by chapter and verse by verse, even in the authorized canon, you find in Genesis 1:26 through 28 the reference to the Godhead, the Holy Trinity, making humanity, the pre-Adamites, in their image. Male and female, he created them. And so, again, it is it's a concept which, though very highly contested and highly opposed, is, I really don't see the big deal over it. And to me, it just makes complete sense. And for a lot of you that have studied it and looked at it in your own way, then yeah, I mean, the creation is made in the image of the Creator, and if the creation itself is both masculine and feminine in duality, then of course we are going to reflect the Godhead, and that the Godhead is also male and female in aspect. I mean, makes perfect sense, and that the family of humanity are being made in their image and being a special creature unto them, that, the nucleus of the family, the mother, father, and the child, represent in symbology the sanctity of the father, the mother, and the son. And, I mean, really, it makes complete sense. But anyway, so tonight I'm going to answer some of the questions and spend some time trying to catch up on a lot of the inquiries that many of you have proposed to us in asking us about different aspects of the work that we do. And so, and then tomorrow night will be a repeat show, as I will be on, if everything works out well, with Robbie Davidson and Rob Skiba and the other individuals that took part in the Scientism Exposed 2 video, the documentary that will be on with Jake Grant on Now You See TV. And so we'll see how that plays out, but it will be a random repeat tomorrow night. And then next week, I will do a follow-up on the last aspect of the Gospel of Gamaliel, the third part on the martyrdom of Pilate, and then I want to share one other text with you called the Avenging of the Savior, which has an interesting aspect to the whole story of Christ, and some aspects and things that have not been mentioned. And some of these teachings come from a collection that we have put together called the Medieval Irish Apocrypha. And so I'll be sharing that with you. We will be doing the final show at some point with Bill McGregor to finish up the tuning fork. And also, when we get in touch with Zephaniah ben Yeshua, again, we'll follow up on the Paleo Hebrew, but I have not seen him online since the 25th of March, and also his phone is disconnected, which is strange to me. And so I don't know what's exactly going on there, but as soon as we do get in touch with Chris, we will do a follow-up on that as well. And then Matt Landman will be coming on with us soon as well to do um, a follow up on the release of Franken Skies, which is about the atmospheric aerosol injection, the military program, which is all behind the chemtrails. And if you have not seen the documentary that he did on that, very much worthwhile for you to spend some time watching it. Very well done, and goes back uh, several decades. I mean, back to the 50s and 60s with regard to news clips and broadcasts of these different agencies and the engineers and the scientists which were behind and the reasons why this program was implemented, even though we never get a straight answer on it. And they are always saying, of course, claiming to be doing this for the benefit, whether to reduce the sun's rays or to reduce flooding or drought or whatever. There's always some kind of excuse where they're saying they're trying to assist us and to help us and to better humanity in some manner, some purpose. And yet we always find out that um, just as the movie Geostorm portrayed with the whole how that whole program to control the weather and to assist humanity in survival here on the earth, that it was hijacked and used for the detriment, for political machinations and maneuvering to assassinate certain peoples or individuals to further the agenda for power, control, money, wealth. I mean, those are all always the driving forces for the controllers of this world and for the elites that work under the pyramid structure of the I, which we know to be Satan, the adversary. Which is always why these New World Order agendas just simply don't make sense to the rest of the world, because even with the chemtrails, I mean, they live here too, so why would they agree to establishing these programs where they're spraying these toxins into the air, and especially right before the storms, that anybody that has paid any kind of attention to what's going on in the skies, you will see that they flood the the skies with the chemtrailing right before it rains. And that what I've also noticed is that when the rains carry down these toxins, that many people end up getting sick, and that they're breathing this the vaporized toxins once they coming down, especially if it's been a warm day and the pavement is hot and the rains coming down for afternoon shower, that you have the steamy mist of the rains evaporating on the black tar of the streets or the concrete, um, and that vaporization makes it very easy for people to inhale these toxins, and so they get into their lungs, and that they are causing breathing complications, um, difficulties, and that people are forming things like bronchitis, pneumonia, whatever it is. And then there are other sinister aspects which connect things like Morgellons and these very itchy, scratchy diseases where those that have it and that exhibit these signs of having these blue and red fibers, these threads interwoven into their bodies, they claim that it itches to such degree that they will scratch themselves until they bleed. And even then, it is difficult for them to not continue. And for those that, you know, have never had such or never even heard of such, it's hard for us to even fathom what that really means. For people to really scratch themselves bloody. And we're not like just talking a little bit of, we're talking like open wounds, like deep gashes where they just can't stop. And so it's a very difficult thing to even speak with or talk to others about. I'm going to share just a couple of the comments here from the chat room. Causation says the climate of the human condition is definitely going through a lot of changes, a lot of energy going about it right now. Shane says, I stay out of the rain at all times. I especially do when, the first rains come down, because that's when you want to try to avoid the first few hours of the first few days, first day of rain, because it's going to carry all of those toxins down from out of the skies. And if you breathe it in, you're likely to get sick. Zipster says, yes, Zen, thank you for sharing that about the chemtrails, and it is always right before it rains. Gina says, I have pics of those things. I see them fly by in my video and have screenshots. Zipster says, I get a reaction every time it rains. And so, yeah, these things are very real. And even though it's difficult for people to recognize what they're seeing because they think this is normal, it's now so normalized and so prevalent within the dynamics of the storms and just the everyday air traffic. It's really, for the kids of this generation, they know nothing different. And it's only in my generation, which I'm 47 years old, that, it's in this generation that this thing came to be so in your face, so commonplace that the kids can't really even remember anything different. And the clouds spreading out into haze and forming these fat, puffy lines, these labyrinths across the sky, these tic-tac-toe formations. There's no way that is natural. But yet, they show it on the weather channels now, that they even have names for these weird, anomalous, strange looking clouds and these tic-tac-toe formation, these lines going across at random angles. Just absolutely bizarre. what it is we're living in and living around. I do want to share though, and I will at the next break. I'll share a video of these individuals in, I believe it's in Sonoma County, California, where they are having a town hall meeting, and all these scientists and all these citizens and all these different individuals, they come forth with questions about the nature of this program and who is supporting it and where are they getting the money to spray, because as much as they are doing it and as widely pervasive as this is across the earth, we're talking about mega trillions of dollars just to support, I would think, even to support over 1 month um, this program of spraying the skies with all these heavy clouds, these heavy streams of toxins. I mean, if we can see them here on the ground, and they're several, however high up, miles up into the air, and we're able to see just streams over miles long of these chemicals, just how many hundreds, thousands of gallons of whatever it is they're spraying, aluminum and barium and all these heavy metals, how much that has to be to in order to pull that off. Who's paying for that? Where are they getting the money to support these clandestine programs? And if it's in any way tied to taxpayer money, well, who's authorizing and giving them the right to do this? Because I know personally that I am in no manner, no way supportive, and somebody somewhere needs to answer some questions. And so these people in Sonoma, they do an excellent job of bringing it to their state officials, and the public outrage was so successful in garnering support that they basically videotaped the meeting and sent along with the minutes these particular videos to their state representatives and senators, and also to their federal representatives in Washington D.C. And so it will be interesting to see if any kind of answer or official statement comes down the line from anybody, but certainly somebody needs to answer something somewhere. And there needs to be a congressional hearing to find out where the money is coming from and which department, which agencies, which groups, whether civilian or military, are supporting these programs that are spraying the skies. Because certainly the EPA and other federal agencies, I would think, would be very interested to see what it is they're spraying above the public over every metropolitan area, and how, in my opinion, it is associated with several, probably hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals getting sick every time it rains. And so, if we can get a push for answers, here in America or anywhere, if anybody anywhere can successfully hold to account their public officials and force somebody to answer something somewhere, well, I would count that as a success, and I would count that as a way of what the Native Americans used to call counting coup, where you basically check your enemy, and you call them out on what they're doing, and you show to them, that you could have taken their life as a warrior, but you spared them. That we need to count coup and to get some answers. At least force the public to come to realization that this is not normal. And I'm sorry to go on a rant about this, but I've been speaking to friends, and my closest friends, they have the eyes to see. I mean, it's undeniable. I point it out to them all the time, the people that are closest to me. And so they recognize, and yet when they speak about this with their loved ones and with other members of their family, then, well, that's just conspiracy. And it's not conspiracy, it's reality. Every one of us is witness to it every day somewhere. And so it just shows you how brainwashed, how closed minded individuals are to the truth, and how unwilling they are to see what's really going on. And so, anyways, let me see. Give me just a second here to find this video. I had it on my Facebook page. I released it with a poem that I wrote called Toxic Skies, I believe is. No, Venomous Skies, that's what it is. And so let me post this to you. And then I'll tell you also what the name of it is. So those of you that are listening in, or that, hear the archives, that you can look it up for yourself. Okay, the video is called Pilots, Doctors, and Scientists Tell Truth About Chemtrails. And it's an excerpt of this gathering, this meeting, and it's got 500,000 views. I mean, really excellent. It's from a meeting in Sonoma, California, a town hall meeting where they're speaking about, what's going on in their skies there. So let me post this in the chat room, and then I'm going to go ahead and get into some of these questions. But as I said, Matt Landman, he is the director of Frankenskies. He will be joining us. I believe it's next week. I'll have to check my calendar, but and he keeps up with all the news on this stuff. And so, and the one that the video I'm talking about is like a 15-minute excerpt, and very powerful, very straightforward, straight to the point. Even the people, you're welcome, Zippy. But even the people that don't want to recognize and that want to just continue to ignore it or make excuses for it, it forces them to have to reassess their closed-mindedness to the various aspects of this truth. And so, very interesting question, Shane. He asked, does anyone think it was an accident that all those fires started in Sonoma County? Now, for those that don't know what we're talking about, it seems that the elites also have now the capacity to utilize some kind of ray. It seems like some kind of ray, maybe a Tesla ray gun or something of that nature, where basically they're using and they're causing fires. I mean, to the point where, usually when a fire starts and it's a forest fire or the result of fires being spread by wind or whatever, that all the vegetation will burn around a certain building or structure. And then it will, it takes vegetation and fuel for the fires to continue and to spread and to gain access to certain places and locations. But what's going on now is that these fires are being started in the middle of concrete parkways, huge parking lots where there's no vegetation, certainly not enough to where it would cause it would cause the level of destruction that you see in these videos. I mean, it's insane. And I mean, I even saw a tree that was hollow on the inside, and the tree was burnt on the inside, and the outside was completely pristine. I mean, you can't explain it. It's insane. And so that to me shows that there's something not right, not natural about what's going on in California with regard to these fires and to the perpetuation of them. That something very weird, something not natural, and that is being, again, just like with the chemtrails, there's some aspect of it that is sinister, that is supported by some kind of clandestine government, military, black op, New World Order, elitist program. And we don't understand it, so not understanding it, we're not able to rationalize, make sense, or comprehend the nature of what we are really dealing with. And, Satan has always counterfeited, has always utilized what seems to be natural, even with a lot of the different tsunamis, like even the one that we had in Banda Aceh, which killed over 100,000 people. That they were doing military drills that morning. They set off some kind of a nuclear device on what was the fault line of the Ring of Fire. And it was the United States. They were, they had a submarine position somewhere on the fault line there. some kind of something that's set off and could have triggered this tsunami. And it seems like, they have it down to a science now. And even the weather manipulation with the creation of hurricanes, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Irma, Harvey, all these hurricanes are being manipulated in different ways, either to intensify them or to make them long lasting or to cause them, like in the case of Hurricane Harvey, to basically sit over an area and dump inches and inches and inches of rain. But anyways, even so, if you haven't seen that movie Geostorm, it's very interesting because it it's them admitting, even though the technology that is being proposed for being responsible for the weather manipulation can't exist in the manner that, only because they're showing this satellite based um, project, the International Space Station and all that, and without, I mean, orbits, which just not possible in my opinion. Only because the Earth is not a globe. There's no curvature. We're not round, so nothing can stay steadily falling in place. And so, if there is some satellite technology, it's based upon weather balloons or whatever, something that is able to keep them suspended up there. But certainly it's not satellites in the normal sense of the word, being made of solar panels and gold and lightweight aluminum, or these very thin metals, and then being sent up uh, into the thermosphere, which gets anywhere from 2 to 4,000 degrees Celsius. And I mean, these kind of elements and components just could not survive in any manner, in any way, shape, or form, in those kind of regions of the world. I mean, that's just common sense. Look up the temperatures for the thermosphere where most of these satellites are said to be. And I mean, that in and of itself tells you that something's not right. All right, going into the questions. And I want to give a shout out to Carol, and I want to ask everybody to please continue praying for her. That Carol did have a lump which was found to be benign, and she's going to have it extracted. And we're very grateful for that, and we wish you continued health. And for any of you out there that are dealing with issues or problems that need prayers, please just let us know. We'll be glad to, put you on our list and pray for you in any manner that we can to support each other and one another in that capacity, because prayers are very powerful and have the capacity to affect reality and the continuation of it in a manner that we don't understand. And that is the least we can do for each other, is to share our prayers with one another and to be specific. It does not cost anything, just a few moments of your time. But for those, if you're like myself, you're praying continuously all day anyways. And so why not throw specific names, specific individuals, specific circumstances, situations, um, those kind of things into your prayers and leave it up to God that hearing us, He will do something about it. And that when more of us come together in prayer and ask for certain individuals, uh, the more better, because then the Most High recognizes, oh well, all the saints are asking, about this person or about this circumstance. So let me send one of my angels to check it out, or not that he doesn't know, anyways. But when we appeal to him, and especially those of you that are truly holy and pious and saintly, um, that are his people, he hears you. Like your own family. When your friend asks you or an acquaintance asks you about something, but then your daughter or your spouse comes up to you and asks you, to please consider or whatever, or to recognize or acknowledge, well, of course you're going to listen with a little more intensity, a little more intently, and you're going to act sooner upon it. And God is that way with his people, I believe, and that those that are closer to him and that follow his commandments and that listen to his instruction and that are considered his children, whether prodigal and still wayward, or those that have returned and that please him in every manner, in every aspect. Okay. Let's get to the questions here. We're going to start with the March, and then, like I said, I'm going to try to get through these. All right, from the chat, this is from Shane. Would that not make this the final year? Daniel said that God would allow Samael, Lucifer, dominion of this world for 120 jubilees, with the jubilee being 50 years. That is 6,000 years. And yes, I do absolutely believe that we are at the end of that time period, and that because God is giving a reprieve to Lucifer and the elites for whatever reason, giving them extension of some manner, and that this last fig tree generation, that in my opinion, I think that we are in the 6,001st year. And the reason I say that is because of the association of the timeline of even when Israel came into being, that some of those dates, in my opinion, show to us the association of Jubilee. For instance, 1917, I believe that was a Jubilee year because of the Balfour Declaration and its connections to the Zionist movement, the regathering of the energy to create Israel again as a nation. And then, that occurred in 1948, but that in 1967, we had the regathering of Israel, as Jerusalem as the capital, and that coming together as the capital city for the nation of Israel once more, that in my opinion also shows to us that that was the Jubilee year. And then we have 50 years later in 2017, the Revelation 12 sign of the Virgin clothed with the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, a child with her in her womb, and a crown of 12 stars that all played out on the Feast of Trumpets last year. And so, in my opinion, that was the 120th Jubilee. And that it places us this year with March 18th being the Rosh Chodesh of the Hebrew month of Nisan, the month of miracles, that was the first day. That was Rosh Hashanah, the Hebrew New Year. And so, yeah, I believe that we're overdue. But, we'll see how it plays out. All right, Link asks, do you believe in the 7 years tribulation? Yes, I do. I recognize this as being scriptural, that the first 3.5 years are the tribulation, and then the next 3.5 years of this 7-year span is the great tribulation, and that the first portion of it is when the New World Order is in place and ruling, and then the Antichrist is revealed for the domination of what is the revealing of the alien gods, the ancient aliens as the rulers, the creators, the benefactors of humanity, that the one world economy, one world nation, one world political, economic, and religious system is all implemented and put into play. And that is also what Albert Pike said in his letter, which let me go ahead and pull that up too, that this is when Luciferianism comes out in its forefront and is no longer hid, but is in your face. And this is the whole reason for the establishment of world government, the United Nations, and the fomenting of these 3 global wars, was in order to bring forth Israel and to have it be the cup of trembling amongst the nations, and then to have the Christian and the Islamic world destroy itself and each other, so that the atheists and the communists can fill the power gap and then bring forth Lucifer. It says here, then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization in the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will form that moment, be without compass or direction, anxious for an idea, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. And so that's their plan. That's what, and this is a letter that was written in 1871, in August 1871, that speaks about the need for the brotherhood, the secret societies, and the mafia and organized crime and terror to foment these reactionary and controlled opposition, these global contentions, for a specific reason. And that they would do this, as I said, in order to drive an agenda. And so, yeah, the Bible speaks about this and shares this and brings it forth. All right. Stephanie asks, has the spirit of Elijah already returned in John the Baptist? And yes, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, that Yeshua speaks about this, how John the Baptist, that Elijah would return, and that he would return at the end, that he would be with John the Baptist as the spirit of Elijah, and that when he had his head chopped off, that the spirit of Elijah would also return at the end of days with Enoch, and that Elijah and Enoch as being the only two people that have not yet died singularly, once in their lifetime, that both of them being spared from having to have died previously, that God would spare them until the end of days and then reveal them as the two witnesses of Revelation 11, and that convicting the Antichrist, that he would target them and would kill them in such manner that their bodies would remain in the streets of Jerusalem for 3.5 days, an equivalent to the 3.5 years that is the reign of the Antichrist. All right, we'll be right back, everyone.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. And I'm going to continue on with the questions and try to make it through as much as we can. This next question has to do with the feast days and how it went down this past week. Was last Friday, actually last Saturday, we had the Passover, which was the 14th of Nisan. And then on the Sunday, the 1st of April, was the full moon Sabbath, Shag Hamatzi, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And then on Monday we had Yom Hibikurim, which is the Feast of First Fruits, the 16th of Nisan, and that was also the first day of the counting of the Omer. Today is April 4th, Wednesday, April 4th. It's the fourth day of the Passover festival, which extends from the 15th to the 22nd of Nisan. And it's a 7-day festival, just as in the fall feast you have extending from the Feast of Tabernacles, the 15th, which is also a full moon, of Tishri, to the 22nd of Tishri. You have the 7-day festival of the Festival of Weeks, or the Feast of Tabernacles, which is a 7-day festival. And then here in the first month, the month of Nisan, you have the same thing, a 7-day festival extending from the full moon to the third quarter moon. And so this festival of unleavened bread will continue until the 8th of April, which is the 22nd day of Nisan. It's the third quarter Sabbath, and it's the 7th day of the counting of the Omer. And then next month, on the 23rd of May, we have the 8th of Sivan, which is the first quarter Sabbath. That's the 49th day of the counting of the Omer. And that's, the 7th perfect Sabbath after the day of first fruits. And so the very next day, the 24th of April, is Shavuot, or Pentecost, the 9th of Sivan, which is always the day after the 7th Sabbath from the time of unleavened bread. And so that will be that's the summer festival. And then the next holy day is the 1st of Tishri, which I'll go ahead and bring that up for you too. The 1st of Tishri will be September 11th. That's Rosh Chodesh, Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, September 11th. And then you have the Day of Atonement, the 10th of Tishri, Yom Kippur, on the 20th of September. And then, like I said, from the 15th through the 22nd of Tishri, you have the 7-day celebration of the festival, the Feast and Festival of Tabernacles. And so that will begin on the 25th of September, which should be the full moon Sabbath, the 15th of Tishri. And it's the 7th month of the 6001st year. It should be Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. And that will continue until the 2nd of October, which is the third quarter Sabbath. And that is the 22nd of Tishri. and then we will, basically be done with the high holy days until the first of next year. The first month, the month of Nisan of next year. All right, and so that the question that was asked with regard to that though was Cindy Evans asked, I'm confused about my responsibility to observe days such as Sabbaths and the feast. I've ordered your calendar from Lulu. Thanks for putting in the work to help us find the correct days. Would you mind helping me to reconcile the idea of keeping special days and foolishly bringing myself under the law? And so, just so you know, Cindy, I did write an entire article about this under my Facebook notes, and you can find it, how I observe the Shabbats and the feast days. And so if you want more detail on it, you can find a portion of one of the chapters of my ninth book, The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. That in that book, because I was reintroduced to the calendar in deciphering Enoch's book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, that I was led to understanding how the real calendar works and how the Sabbaths and the real feast days are determined by the lunar phases of the moon. In that, if you're not following and don't understand how this calendar works, it's difficult for individuals to make sense of when and how the Sabbaths fall and also the Levitical feast days. But for those that do understand and come to discernment on how even the sun and the moon and the solar and the lunisolar year come together in conjunction to determine the appointed times, the Moedim, the days, the weeks, the months, the years, the annual years, as well as the great year, which is the solar, the zodiac year, which that's a 25,000 year cycle. And it also helps us to keep track with time. That once you understand all these things, it will better enable you to keep up with and to monitor the passing of time. And so in that book, I also write about how it was that I began moving away from acknowledgement of the Constantinian pagan Gregorian calendar, as well as the feast days that were determined by it, and began to honor and observe again the holy days as laid out by God in the heavens, and how I choose to honor and celebrate them. And so you can find it in both that book and also on my Facebook notes under Zen Garcia. All right. Frank says, I have been listening to your teachings for the last 2 weeks through your YouTube channel. All I can say is, wow, we have been so deceived. Also, I have a question. You said we pre-existed. How did we fall? What did we do in the past eternity that got us cast out of heaven? God bless you. Sincerely, Frank. And so in order to answer that question, I want to share with you and read really quickly a Psalm 110. Oh, I had it laid out, but The window somehow got closed, so let me pull this up again. And I wanted to read it from the Targum version, but I thought I should probably read the King James since you are more familiar with the study of this book. But afterwards, I'll read the portion of the Targum version that I want to bring forth as well. All right. Psalm 110, I believe it is. Let me make sure. No, it's 102. I apologize. And we're going to begin with verse. Let's start with verse 17. It says, He will regard the prayer of the destitute and not despise their prayer. This shall be written for the generation to come, and the people which shall be created shall praise the Lord. For he hath looked down from the height of his sanctuary, from heaven did the Lord behold the earth, to hear the groaning of the prisoner, to loose those that are appointed to death, to declare the name of the Lord in Zion, and his praise in Jerusalem. When the people are gathered together, and the kingdom to serve the Lord. He weakened my strength in the way, he shortened my days. I said, O my God, take me not away. In the midst of my days, thy years are throughout all generations. Of old hast thou laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of thy hands. They shall perish, but thou shalt endure. Yea, all of them shall wax old like a garment, and as a vesture shalt thou change them, and they shall be changed. But thou art the same, and thy years shall have no end. The children of thy servants shall continue, and their seed shall be established before thee. All right, now listen to this rendition from the Targum. I think it's a little bit more interesting because, in my opinion, it is speaking about our pre-existence. And I'm going to go ahead and skip down to around verse 17 as well. For the city of Zion was built by the command of the Lord. He was revealed in glory. He turned to the prayer of those who were made desolate and did not despise their prayer. Let this prayer be written for a latter generation, and the people yet to be created will praise Yah. For he watched from the high heavens of his holiness. The Lord looked from heaven to earth to hear the cry of the prisoners, to set loose the children of those handed over to death, to tell in Zion the name of the Lord and his praise in Jerusalem, when peoples are gathered together and kingdoms to worship in the presence of the Lord. My strength is harmed by the weariness of the path of exile. My days are shortened. I will say in the presence of my God, do not remove me from the world at the halfway point of my days. Bring me to the world to come, because your years are throughout generations of generations. In the beginning, when all creatures were created, you founded the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hands. They will perish, but you will endure, and all of them, like a garment, will wear out. Like a mantle, you will change them, and they will pass away. and you are he who created them, and your years do not come to an end. The sons of your servants will abide in the land, and their offspring will be established in your presence. And so, Daniel is speaking about our exile. And see, our exile is when Adam and Eve were expelled from paradise, they were put under, where it says here, to hear the cries of the prisoners, to set loose the children of those handed over to death. That when they fell into mortal flesh, they were handed over to death. They were placed under the authority of death. That's when they had to die, just like it said in the garden, the day that you touch the tree of the knowledge of good and evil or eat of it, you shall die. Indeed, they did die because they were transformed into flesh in less than one day. A day is as 1,000 years with the Lord. That before that 1,000 years had passed, they in fact did die. But they were placed under the authority of death for eating and touching the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Because when they touched it, that's when they were transformed into flesh. And so our exile here, as Daniel puts it, he turned to the prayer of those who were made desolate. We were made desolate when we were exiled here to this earth. He watched from the high heavens of his holiness. The Lord looked down from heaven to earth to hear the cry of the prisoners. We are indeed prisoners. We are under the authority of Satan. And that we have been placed under the authority of death. That even Satan, even though he doesn't die in one lifetime, he has been given reprieve for what is the second world age. And so for 7,000 years, he and the rebel angels have been given a short reprieve. But then after that, they will be annihilated. They will die. They will be destroyed as if they had never been. The second death, that after the millennial reign, they will be cast into the lake of fire for what is the second death. And so even though we were placed under the authority of death and under the fallen, the rebel angels who have temporary reign of this world, they also were placed under the authority of death, and they will be annihilated as if they had never been as well. And so Daniel says, my strength is harmed by the weariness of the path of exile. The path of exile is life, our life here in the flesh. And it is in the flesh that our days are shortened, that every day we are one day less, that we are moving towards death, towards our appointment with death, where we will leave these bodies and we will go on into eternity. And since Christ died on the cross, we now will go upon death either to Sheol or to paradise. But before Christ died, everybody went to Sheol. Adam and all of the descendants, all of his righteous descendants, they were all waiting in Sheol for Christ, that Savior Messiah, to come down and to redeem them. That was one of the prophecies. That was the first resurrection. And so with regard to what did we do and how did we end up being placed into the flesh and come into this lifetime, into this incarnation? Well, it all has to do with the separation of light and darkness. And I've covered this in great detail in a lot of my work, but I do recommend that people that are interested in this topic, that you get the first book of the Great Contest series, The War in Heaven, because I cover in great detail election, preexistence, and predestination. And that our choices and the circumstances and the situations that we find ourselves in this lifetime all stem from our election. And our election is determined by how it was and what we did and how we were in our previous spiritual incarnations. That we are not living and reincarnating over lifetime into multiple, flesh forms and taking on embodiment over and over until we get it right, till we somehow escape the reincarnation wheel. But we did pre-exist before coming into flesh. We were spiritual, bright-natured beings, that we have always been part of existence since the very first day when God created the heavens and the earth. He created the angelic beings and all the spirits of all the creatures, as Daniel says here in the Targum as well. He says, in the beginning, when all creatures were created, you founded the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hands. That was the first day. If you read in the book of Jubilees, I think it's in the Jubilees or Jasher, one of them, it speaks about how all the spirits of all the angels and all the elements and all the luminaries and all of creation, how the spirits of all the creatures and everything were all created on the first day. And all the souls of humanity were created on the first day. And then we took on embodiment later. But we have existed for the entirety of the creation. All of us are immortal, and we all have been here since the beginning. And so, that's part of our election. And so when Lucifer decided to try to overthrow Christ and to tempt all of the angels and to see who would join him in trying to overthrow Christ so that he could be like the Most High, that he could be, he could rule kingdoms and worlds of his own, and the other rebel angels could as well, that these were the promises that were given to everybody, and some accepted, some didn't, and some didn't know which way to go, one way or the other. And so when the war occurred in the heavens and the elect angels fought against the rebel ones, a lot of the angels, the sons of God, a lot of us did nothing but sat in the middle, just waiting for the outcome to see who we would then serve. Whether, because the appeal of Lucifer was so great that he and the angels which fought with him actually thought they would overthrow their maker. That's how ignorant they were and how much they believed in the lies and the promises that he had made to them. When, if you think about it, how can any creature ever really overthrow its maker? But yet, we see this even in the singularity with artificial intelligence, with Skynet, with the whole Terminator series, with the rebel angels with Lucifer and the story of him, thinking he could be as the Most High and overthrow the Christ. I mean, this is the story of good and evil, of light and darkness, and the separation of it. We're still in that story. It's still playing out. But the reason it is so is because once the story ends, all of us will know without a doubt why it is we need the benevolence of our Creator and why it is that He is deserving, why the Godhead, the Holy Mother, Father, and Son are deserving of our worship, are deserving of our prayer and our gratitude, and why it is that we should willingly serve under their monarchy, that being a righteous king, they deserve the loyalty of all of us as their, not just their subjects, but as their children, as their family, as their loved ones, as the prodigal child, as the beloved bride, as the wise virgin. And so it is this experience, it is this lifetime, it is this reality which is teaching us all why it is that we don't want to trust in our own self-determination, in our selfishness, in the evil, in the inclination of Lucifer and the other rebel angels to go their own way, to do it in the way that they want to do it, in trusting in our own free will, our own self-determination. And rather than doing it that way, to listen to God and to understand the larger picture, and that as the omniscient, omnipresent, the Alpha, Omega, the Aleph, Tav, the understanding the beginning from the end, you know, why it is that we should love Him as our Father, and the Holy Spirit as our Mother, and the Christ as our as the only begotten, and as our Creator, as our Maker, and that we should have love and gratitude, that we should choose to follow them out of love and gratitude. And so this is the lesson of this lifetime, the lesson of this duality, this duplicitous world and realm that we are learning through good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. So we recognize that, hey, we don't ever want to do it this way again. Now we know why we should have just stayed the narrow way. But instead, we've had to, God has, and the Most High has had to acknowledge and also accommodate the free will of the rebel angels as well as rebel humanity. And it's because He loves us so much to give us the free will to allow us to manifest whatever it is that we choose to place our focus, our intent, our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors, and our deeds upon. Okay, if you guys really want to do it that way, if you want to try to, rule it yourself and to determine and to follow lust and to fall into sin, and you want to learn through pain and suffering, all right, I'll allow it. And so it's because of our stubborn hard-heartedness and His long suffering that He's allowing us to go through what we're going through now. And this is our choice. So we can't blame Him for evil. Oh, also, there's another thing I wanted to bring forth, and that's it It is Isaiah chapter 48. And somebody just recently asked me about this as well. Let me see if I can find that really quickly. It's about the creation of evil. Okay, let me check this really quickly. See if I can find it so I can share it with you, because this is really interesting. It just shows another reason why it's important for us to study everything, and to read the other ancient manuscripts to get a better understanding of those things which seem weird or ambiguous within the canonical materials. And so I don't know that I'll really be able to find this really quickly. I've got the quote in one of my books. I'll go look for it there real quick, and then I'll just share a commentary. But I think this is very important to bring forth as well. And it will give you greater insight into that particular passage, because the translation in the King James is not precise. And because it's not precise, it makes God seem really weird in character. And that has to do with, again, with evil and whether he is responsible for it. Because in the way that it reads in the King James, it makes it sound like that God created both good and evil. And that's not really what it says. And I'll share with you as soon as I can find this what it's really saying. Which book did I write that in? Gosh, I wrote so many. I think it's in this book, so let me check here really quickly. It's hard remembering all the quotes and all the passages that I've shared in all of my books. But at least they're there, And okay, yeah, I think it's in this book here. Yes, here it is. Okay. In my book, Firmament, Vaulted Dome of the Earth, this is Isaiah chapter 45, verses 5 through 7. And let me pull it up from the King James first to read both in context so you can get a better understanding, a fuller grasp of why I prefer the study of the Targum, which that was another question somebody had asked me, what version of the Bible I prefer to read and study from. And that is, for the Old Testament, the first 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch, I prefer the Aramaic Targum. And the reason I do so is because of cases like this, is you get greater clarity, a better understanding as to what is really being revealed in the original language. Because you get more detail with the Targum being older and more precise. That the Aramaic is translated directly from the Hebrew rather than our receiving it either through the Greek, which was also translated from either the Hebrew or the Aramaic. But, we're 4 steps into it by the time we get it. Whereas the Aramaic is directly from the Hebrew, and so it's 1 step. All right. It says this in Isaiah chapter 45. I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me. I girded thee, though thou hast not known me. that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And so he says here, he creates evil when he doesn't create evil. He doesn't even support evil. And so, again, this makes it seem like God supports the injustice in the world and he allows it. But it's us, it's the rebel angels who create the evil, and it's humanity in following the rebel angels that support the creation and the perpetuation of it. And so it's us. It's not God. It's not the Most High, nor the Godhead. They do not support nor do they create evil. Even though they accommodated the rebellion and the free will of the rebel angels and humanity, but they do not create evil. And so this is absolutely wrong. And I'll show you why. Let's check out what the Targum says. And when I first read this, I was absolutely blown away, and it made complete sense to me. All right, it says this: I am the Lord and none else. There is no God beside me. I have supported thee, though thou hast not known that thou shouldest fear me, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west. I am the Lord, and there is none else, who prepares the light and creates darkness, makes peace and creates punishment for evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. So isn't that a little bit different? I mean, actually, it's a lot different. Completely portrays God in complete differentiation. Instead of, and there is none else who prepares the light and creates darkness, makes peace and creates evil. No. It says, prepares the light, creates darkness, makes peace, and creates punishment for evil. Now, how much of a difference is that? And so how did they, was there purpose in bringing it forth like that? I mean, did they accidentally translate it that way? It makes you wonder. But if there's things like that, I mean, this is really, because look how many people ask me and have asked me about this passage. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. No, he creates punishment for evil. What a big difference. And it's the same thing with, going to Genesis chapter 4, where, it says, and Adam knew Eve, and brought forth Cain. That's not what it says in the Targum, which again, remember, the Targum predate the King James by 2,000 years, and they are older even than the Greek Septuagint. They're 200 years older than the Greek Septuagint, or at least 100. If the Greek Septuagint was brought in the 3rd century, the Targum were reinstituted when the temple was rebuilt after the 7 years of exile from Babylon, which began in 587 BC. And then I believe it took 40 years for the temple to be built. And so if they returned in 517 BC, and then it took 40 years, then it would be like 470 BC that the temple was rebuilt, worship reinstituted, and then the Targums were created because the Hebrew people had assimilated Aramaic while living abroad in Babylon, and they could not read the Torah in Hebrew any longer. And so the Aramaic Targums were authorized then for the Hebrew people to study their books, their holy books. And a lot of people say that, the Targums are just commentary, but these are the books that the Hebrew people studied from themselves in the Holy Temple. I would think that they would be careful in translating it, so that it captured the essence of exactly what they were trying to bring forth. And then again, just with Genesis 4:1, we see in the Targum it says, and Adam knew Hava, and who had desired the angel, and then bare Cain, and said, I have received a man from the angel of the Lord. I mean, that whole thing of and who desired the angel, it shows that it was her desiring the angel which brought forth Cain, in that she received a man from the angel of the Lord, that the angel of the Lord was Lucifer, Satan the adversary, and that indeed, yeah, she received a man from the angel of the Lord, because that angel of the Lord seduced her, beguiled her, impregnated her, and it was because of him that she brought forth Cain as the first murderer, liar, and deceiver. Completely unlike his stepfather, Adam. And so, I try to go to the most ancient translations. And with regard to the New Testament, I prefer the Aramaic Peshitta, which went through the Eastern churches. And they never went through the Greek translations, as did the Catholic Church and the Western churches of the Roman Catholic Empire. That the Eastern Orthodox churches, they use the Peshitta, which is the direct Aramaic translations from the Hebrew Torah. And so you don't have, again, that extra step of going through the Greek, and then the Greek being translated into, the English, that the Peshitta was from the Hebrew to the Aramaic and directly into the English. And it skips, because the Roman Catholic Church, they're the ones that took out the whole thing of the Holy Spirit being feminine. And they inserted in all of the New Testament passages, like John 14:26, where it speaks about the Holy Spirit being the comforter and that he would be sent. I mean, everywhere else it speaks of the Holy Spirit, wisdom, Sophia, as being a she. And then when you look up the word that you have transcribed there for he, the word is eknios, and it says it can mean he, she, or it. And so, again, those are some of the things that cause confusion for people. And so rather than being confused, read the most ancient of sources and cut out all of the mistranslations, misinterpretations, and go to the source, so that you can make sense of it in a way that, in my mind, captures the original essence of the scripture. And so once more, for the Old Testament, I prefer the Aramaic Targum, and I have all of the Targum for It was the original was only the first 5 books because those were the only books that the Hebrews uh, held as holy books. And then the later prophets were added. The Daniel and Jeremiah and Baruch and those books that were written while they were in exile during that time, and then all of the other books added later that you can get these targums as well, like the Targum of Isaiah, which I just read from. Most of these targums are not easy to get, and they're very expensive for whatever reason. They're only being reproduced in hardback form, which makes them difficult to get for people that don't have the financial means. Myself, I'm very dedicated to the study of the ancient manuscripts and to the other translations, and so I've made it a priority to get all of them so that in doing my research, I can share with you the various passages like this, like the Genesis narrative, the parable of the garden, and even here in Isaiah chapter 45, where it speaks of, not God creating evil, but creating the punishment of evil. I mean, how much of a big difference is that? And so I do recommend that you can find, there are some paperback translations of some of the Targum. Like, I believe you can find the Targum of Isaiah for about $25 in paperback form. And the one that I'm speaking about, which when I post this show, I'll put the link for this particular version of it. It shows the King James, the Targum version, and one other, all 3 translations side by side by side. So you can read each one of them in parallel and study all of them side by side by side, which is absolutely a great resource, a fascinating read and study. And when you read and study these ancient manuscripts that way, it shows you just how much has been mistranslated, misinterpreted, and when reading the original sources, just how much of a different view you get for, one other thing. You know how it talks about the fall of Lucifer and his rebellion in Isaiah chapter 14? Well, in the Targum version, when you read the beginning passages of Isaiah, he actually begins to start speaking about the rebellion of Lucifer and his being expelled and cast out, going back, if I remember correctly, all the way back to even chapters 8 and 9 and 10. And all of those chapters are about the fall and the rebellion of Lucifer. And when I was reading this, and I should probably just do a show on this sometime and share these passages. But, with all the research that I do, I find so much incredible information. It's hard to keep up with. And it's hard to share all this information with all of you, but I'm doing the best that I can. And I'm really appreciate all of you being interested in these areas of study, and that you are wanting to learn and to at least have it for yourself, so that you can study and remember and study. And yes, Shane, it is Isaiah chapter 45, verse 5 through 7, which, as I said, the last verse says, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west, I am the Lord, and there is none else, who prepares the light and creates darkness, makes peace, and creates punishment for evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And so it's not God creates darkness and evil, but he creates punishment for evil. Very big difference there. And when you study the Targum, you'll see, I mean, even the 5 books, the first 5 books that we have put out, incredible amount of information and discernment there. All right, God bless all. We'll be on Now You See TV tomorrow night. Be blessed. Good night.
Listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.